There are plenty of great stories related to the restoration of the 1908 Wood Island Life-Saving Station in Kittery Point, Maine. I'm going to tell you just one, but it's a really good one. I'm going to tell you about the acquisition of the Mervin Roberts. For the last 5 years, work has been underway to bring back to life the pre-Coast Guard station on this little island on the coast where Maine and New Hampshire meet. Before the U.S. Coast Guard was created in 1915, there was the U.S. Life-Saving Service. The Life-Saving Service performed the same kind of search and rescue operations that the Coast Guard does today. Hundreds of lives were saved by the brave men from Wood Island Station. They were called surfmen, or storm warriors. This station building was very nearly lost from many years of neglect. It was in tough shape. But now it's better than new. The restoration is almost done. The plan is to wrap it up and finish the job in 2021. The finish line is so close. A charity, the Wood Island Life-Saving Station Association, called WILSA, has taken on this project on behalf of the station's owner, the town of Kittery. The town couldn't afford to maintain their property and were making plans to demolish it. I'm the president of that charity, and my name is Sam Reed. Wood Island is soon to become a Maritime Museum open to the public. The museum will tell the story of the brave men that launched rowing boats called surf boats to help mariners in distress. It's a bit hard to imagine a group of men getting in rowboats, in storms, at night, in the winter, in Maine, but that's what they did all the time. And they risked their own lives doing it. It's an inspiring story of dedication to duty. Our charity is working hard to keep alive that extraordinary story in this special building. How did these men do this? Who were they? What wrecks happened? What was it like? And all of this will be explained at the new museum. We can't wait to share it all and teach others to pass it on for a long while to come. An opportunity to acquire an original surf boat from the late 1930s popped up this past fall, and WILSA jumped at the chance. These boats are exceptionally rare, crazy rare. What we didn't know when we started to look at this boat was how many pieces of this puzzle would come together so quickly. What kind of boat was this? Where was it built? Where had it been in service? What, if any, relevance did it have to Wood Island? Who would we meet along the way? How would we pay for it? How would we restore it? It was just like a big jigsaw puzzle or scavenger hunt. Acquiring the Mervin Roberts was really special. It's taken the Wood Island Restoration Project a few huge steps forward towards reaching the goal of becoming a maritime museum. And that museum will be so unique. It will only be accessible by boat, for starters. There are only a dozen or so life-saving stations open to the public in the USA. None of them have a marine railway or a surf boat launching into the water. What we're soon to accomplish in Kittery will be a one-of-a-kind thing. Wood Island will be able to tell the story of the surfmen so well with its own operational surf boat and marine railway. So pull up a seat and let me tell you about the acquisition of the Mervin Roberts. I'll roll it out for you with the dates that things happened to show you how it all came together. In mid-September 2020, a WILSA board member, Buzz Bussey, saw an advertisement on Facebook offering to sell an old surf boat. He sent it along to me. Our first thought was that such a boat would be great to have to help us build a historic boat cradle. The boat on the cradle would help us work out the kinks on rebuilding the marine rail. You see, the surf boats at Wood Island were waiting in the station on special cradles that had train wheels to roll down the train track of the marine railway. When there was an emergency, they would be launched. I messaged to the seller saying Wood Island was interested in talking. September 21, I sent some photos of the boat from the Facebook ad to Tim Dring for his thoughts. Tim is a board member of the U.S. Life-Saving Service Heritage Association, and he is the national expert on early Coast Guard vessels. He wrote a book called American Coastal Rescue Craft. That book is all about the history of the boats that the Life-Saving Service and then later the Coast Guard have used over the years. He's compiled an extensive database of all the remaining early Coast Guard boats, and that list is not long. He said that it was a pulling surf boat, meaning it was a rowing boat that had an engine added later. It was not a motorized surf boat that had had an engine when new. September 30th, I talked to Dave Smith, the seller of the boat, for the first time. Dave said the boat was a monomoy type. He didn't know exactly how old it was, and it seemed as though he didn't really want to part with the boat. He said that the very first time he saw it, at a wooden boat parade at Mystic Seaport, he had to have it. I asked him to donate the boat to Wilsa, but there was no chance of that. He wanted to be paid. Frankly, we weren't making much progress, so just to keep things moving along, I asked what the boat's name was. He told me it was called the Mervin Roberts. So I asked who that was. He explained that Mervin had sold him the boat in 2006 and was a well-loved member of the southern Connecticut town Old Lyme, right where the Connecticut River meets Long Island Sound. That was where the boat was located. He said Mervin was 98 years old but still doing well. It immediately struck me that the friends and family of Mervin may want to pay for the boat as a way to honor him. I threw that idea out, and Dave said it might work, but we should check with Mervin. Suddenly, we had a basic plan. But Dave had lost touch with Mervin. He didn't know how to contact him. I said, leave that to me. In early October, I searched the internet and found an article about Mervin. It was a big profile piece, and it was recent. He had been the chaplain of the Old Lyme Fire Department for 50 years and was clearly quite a character and someone that really was well-known and well-loved. I sent an email to the publisher, Olwen Logan, of the online newspaper Limeline. She emailed right back saying she would be happy to help make the connection, but didn't know how to contact Mervin. But she knew people to ask, in particular Tim Griswold, the first selectman of Old Lyme. On October 22, after an email or two, I spoke with Tim Griswold by phone. Tim was protective of the boat, which he had known for years, and protective of Mervin. After a series of hard questions, Tim was really happy about the plan taking shape. He said he would have Mervin give me a call. He also said he would personally help raise the funding needed. Tim became absolutely critical to putting this plan in place. October 24, Mervin called me as Tim had encouraged him to do, and he invited me to lunch at his home. He told me many stories of long trips in the open ocean as well as winning prizes at Mystic Seaport wooden boat shows. October 26, Tim Dring had been looking closely at photos and thought that the boat was a Type SR pulling surf boat. They were all made at the Coast Guard facility in Curtis Bay, south of Baltimore, Maryland. They were produced from 1937 to 1946. The Coast Guard was using much larger boats with engines by the late 1930s, but they continued to produce the old-style rowing boats for training and occasional rescue work. Tim thought 300 total had been made. He strongly encouraged me to buy the boat. October 31st, Jim White and I drove down from Kittery, Maine to Old Lyme, Connecticut to visit the Mervin Roberts. Jim is a fantastic photographer, videographer. He's donated so many hours of valuable time to document the restoration of Wood Island. His videos are fantastic. Our thinking was that if we were going to meet someone who was 98 years old, we should record it. When we arrived, Nate Piper of the Strawberry Bank Boat Shop in Portsmouth, New Hampshire was waiting. He was there to put some experienced eyes on this boat before we made a decision. Tim Griswold welcomed us all. Dave Smith showed off the boat proudly. Tim Dring was on the phone, and Jim flew his drone. The boat was old for sure, but it was gorgeous. It would need some serious love, without a doubt, but it was obviously a boat that Wilsa should buy. The price was negotiated to $5,500. We said yes on the spot. Lunch at Mervin's nearby home followed. His daughter, Edith Main, had cooked a lovely meal, and the video camera rolled while Mervin told us stories about himself and of the boat's past. He said that a man named Ben Clarkson had owned the boat before him, but he didn't know where Ben was. Mervin had taken ownership of the boat in 1998 when he was 77 years old. He had a lovely book of wooden boats with a fantastic photo of this boat being driven by an unknown person with a 1997 registration sticker on the bow. Mervin told of his early career as a naval officer during World War II and his love for the sea and boats of all sorts. He talked about living in Old Lyme since 1960 and raising 6 kids there. He was warm, welcoming, and so happy to know that his namesake boat was going to Wood Island. He had prepared remarks to deliver to us, and we listened closely.
U.S. Coast Guard Surfboat Narrative, MFR, Old Lyme, Connecticut, October 31st, 2020. Lee Steele and Mervin Roberts were officers of the Trade Winds, a nonprofit school located in Old Saybrook and dedicated to small craft and the marine arts. There was a school for city children. Trade Winds was then run by Ben Clarkson of Old Lyme, who administered the operation. There came a time when the wages due to the teachers did not mesh with the timing of the income from the Connecticut State Grant, and so Steele and Roberts made up the shortage, each with a $2,500 loan to Trade Winds. However, the borrower couldn't repay, and so the lenders took possession of the Coast Guard surfboat to settle the loan. Eventually, Roberts brought out Steele, now deceased. He continued to operate it until 24 July 2006. Roberts sold the boat, by then named the Mervin F. Roberts, to David L. Smith for $6,000. By the time this is written, Smith is negotiating with a museum named the Wood Island Station, Kittery Point, Maine, to acquire the boat for the facility dedicated to the lifeboat service, which is but a small part of the U.S. Coast Guard history. Although it's called a monomoy, it was built in a U.S. government boatyard in approximately the year 1920 as a rowing surfboat in Baltimore, Maryland. The boatyard was about 6 miles southeast of Baltimore, and it was known as Curtis Creek. So, thanks to Clarkson, Steele, and Roberts, Mervin F. Roberts now belongs to David L. Smith, who was negotiating the sale of aforementioned marine to the aforementioned Marine Museum. Of course, Roberts is the name on the boat and its intended purpose. He would contribute in cash an amount for the assurance that the boat remain in the museum on exhibit permanently, and that all the written and pure printed material that he's accumulated would be donated to the museum.
Mervin also donated an artwork of a surfboat pictured for the Wood Island Museum. It showed a monomoy. He signed the back, and I promised to hang it proudly at the station. I called Tim Dring on the drive back to Maine, and he was focused on the lift hooks at bow and stern. He briefly thought it might be a B.B. McClellan-type surfboat from a Coast Guard cutter. November 6th. I did some searching on the internet and found someone that seemed to be the Ben Clarkson we were looking for. There was an address only in southern Massachusetts, no phone number. So I sent Ben a letter. I asked him to give me a call. November 8th. Tim Dring had reviewed the photos and measurements from the boat visit in detail and confirmed what he had thought earlier. It was a Type SR pulling surfboat with an engine added later. His personal database said only 5 of these boats remain in the USA, and this was the only one of those that still could go in the water. Wow, rare indeed. It was 25 feet 6 inches long, a little over 7 feet wide, and about 2,000 pounds. It had an 8-oarsman rowing en banc, meaning sitting next to each other with 1 oar each. A 9th man would have stood in the stern with a long oar to steer. It was clinker built, meaning that the strips of wood that made up the hull overlapped each other. The hull was cypress and the frame oak. November 13th, Ben Clarkson called. He told an amazing story of sailing along the coast of Maine in the early 1990s and seeing 3 old surfboats under a pine tree covered in pine needles at Friendship, Maine. He went to the house there, knocked on the door, and soon bought all three. He took them back to the area where the Connecticut River meets Long Island Sound, as he had started a school for high school-age kids called the River School in Old Saybrook. Mervin had been a board member of that school, and they named the boat after him as a surprise thank you for his hard work. Ben had been in the Coast Guard for 7 years, so he knew well what the boats were as soon as he saw them. The photo from the Wooden Boat magazine with the mystery driver was confirmed as Ben. Maybe the most critical information was that Ben said the sellers told him the boats came from the Burnt Island life-saving station near Port Clyde, Maine, not far from Friendship. That station had closed in 1964. It seems likely the boats had just stayed in the local area since that time, but what had happened between the mid-1960s and the early 1990s was not known. During that time, the engine was added, but that was all that was clear. Mervin had taken ownership of the Type SR boat in 1998, and soon thereafter, maybe 2000, the River School closed and the other two surf boats, they were a different type, went back to Maine to join the outward-bound Hurricane Island program. Amazingly, that program was set up on Burnt Island. More education for young people. Their webpage says, quote, "The point is you do things you don't even think is possible," unquote. That sure makes me think of restoring Wood Island Station. I called Tim Dring to give the update that the boat was from Burnt Island Station. This was huge information because it meant that the exact date of construction and delivery to Burnt Island was perhaps something that could be found. It might also be possible to find service records of the boat, where it was used in rescues and training. I then called to Dave Smith to tell him this news and confirm that the payment for the boat had arrived. He was really excited and said that he remembered hearing some rumors of the boat coming from Burnt Island. November 15th. In early 2020, Tim Dring hired a consultant to go to the National Archives in College Park, Maryland, to scan copies of old Board of Survey reports from the late 1940s. Those reports were created when assets were being sold or destroyed. The Coast Guard had decided in 1948 to discontinue use of all old surf boats, so that time frame was rich with information about these boats being sold or let go. The materials from the consultant had not been finalized as the work had not been completed. The COVID pandemic had shut down the National Archives, so the project was put on hold. But Tim began to dig into the scans that had been collected to see if he could find some more about the Mervin Roberts, and he found something else that was huge. A Type SR pulling surf boat had been at Wood Island Station. This exact kind of boat had used the Marine Railway at Wood Island. What had started as a boat that was a nice idea and helpful for finalizing the cradle and the Marine Railway was in fact historically accurate for Wood Island. The construction of the Type SR boat at Wood Island had been finished on April 16, 1937. It was delivered new to the Isles of Shoals station only a few miles from Wood Island. After 10 years of service there, on November 14, 1947, it was transferred to Wood Island. Wood Island itself was decommissioned in 1948, and that boat was then transferred to nearby Station Portsmouth Harbor in Newcastle, New Hampshire. It was taken out of service and declared surplus on June 30, 1950. It was sold September 14, 1951. It was not on Tim's list of one of the 5 surviving Type SR surf boats. November 19, Tim Dring found the cartoon of the Mervin Roberts from 1943 at Burnt Island Station. November 24, the Mervin Roberts returned to Maine for the first time in 30 years. She was delivered to Pan Am Railways in Waterville at their massive locomotive maintenance facility north of Augusta. The reason she went there was to help in the construction of the custom cradle that the railway was planning to build for Wilso. Having the boat on site would confirm that the cradle was perfect. Pan Am had already donated the train track needed for the marine rail. The rail they had given was from 1896, exactly the same size rail of what had been there when new. It was called 70-pound. November 25, Mervin called me out of the blue and we had a really nice talk. I brought him up to speed on the many new developments. We both really enjoyed the cartoon that Tim had found, which I had emailed to Mervin. He told me to hurry up and finish the Marine Railway, as he wanted to see it in operation himself. November 29, I located the owner of Burnt Island, and it was soon thereafter that we connected. He said that the boathouse at Burnt Island had had a huge fire in 1940, so it was a miracle that the Mervin Roberts had survived that. He also said that a father and son team from Friendship, the Davis family, lived in the old station in the summers to be closer to their fishing grounds, and had been doing so for 45 years. They knew a lot about the station and its history. He also sent along many excellent photos of Burnt Island Station and its boathouse. Sadly, none of those photos showed the Type SR pulling surfboat. December 30th, Mervin Roberts died at age 98. A huge funeral followed. As I mentioned, he had been the chaplain for the Old Lyme Fire Department for over 50 years, so the fire department transported his casket to the graveyard by fire truck, draped in black bunting, with a huge parade of fire trucks following behind. It is so nice to know that Mervin was happy about his namesake vessel heading to Kittery. He had provided Wilsa one of the largest donations himself, only a few weeks before he died. So at this point, the cradle is under construction in Waterville using the historic cradle plans provided by Tim Dring. The Davis family in Friendship is searching for the people that sold the boat to Ben Clarkson. A group is forming in southern Maine to give the Mervin Roberts some maintenance and a paint job through the winter and spring months. It seems clear she'll be returning to the all-white hull color that the Coast Guard used when the boat was in service. Tim Dring sent along the exact paint scheme that he had a record of somehow. Work continues to finalize the Marine Railway and Pier at Wood Island and have those two things completed in the summer of 2021. Tim Dring is poking around trying to figure out exactly which boat from his records was the Mervin Roberts to confirm its exact date of construction, hull number, and service record. If all goes according to plan, which is naturally always a big if, by this fall, the newly restored Mervin Roberts will be tucked into Wood Island Station, ready to spend the winter happily inside the boatroom on its special new cradle after traveling up the newly rebuilt Marine Railway. The restoration of Wood Island is all about remembering the brave local men from southern Maine and coastal New Hampshire that rowed out to save mariners in distress, usually in the worst weather possible. For the Mervin Roberts to come along at the perfect time and have it turn out to be historically accurate for Wood Island was just outstanding. The group of people that quickly gathered to lend a hand is the really cool part of this story. From Jim White and Nate Piper to Pan Am Railways, Tim Griswold and Tim Dring, as well as Dave Smith, Ben Clarkson, the Davis family, Jeremy Winterstein, and of course Mervin Roberts himself and his daughter Edith. Meeting all of these people, helping to bring them together, that's been the best part. To have been able to meet Mervin and have him tell the story of the boat that honors him just before he died, that was unforgettable. The Wilsa board and all of our friends and supporters are doing what we can to give that lovely old boat a restored new home and a new mission, educating the next generation about the life-saving service and their dedication to the duty of helping others, even if it meant risking their own lives. We know these old buildings and old boats can be restored, even if they're in really bad shape. The men who lived and rode there may have come and gone, but having each new generation keep their story alive is certainly possible. It's meaningful, it's satisfying, and there's such a great message to take to heart. Helping others, even if it means risking your own life. That message is why this project is so special. It's why saving Wood Island Station is so important.
What was the most number of people you've had in the boat? Was it around 13 or so?
At least that number, yeah. It's quite buoyant.
No doubt. And how fast does the boat go?
I would guess that in Dead Sea conditions and no wind, it might make 9.5 knots. Actually, that engine that's in it now is an identical replacement for the one that I acquired the boat with, but that one finally wore itself out. And so this is a replacement engine.
Yes.
And it ought to be good for another 1,000 hours at least.
Well, I think we've taken a lot of your time, Mervin. We are looking forward to giving this boat, many, many, many years to come of a happy life.
If you'd like to comment, drop an email to contact@woodislandlifesaving.org.